Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second of potentially a three-series podcast hosted by Parker Bridge, which is now an Anchor company. The podcast today, we're going to talk about the current climate and hopefully offer some tips and advice on what we can do to help our listeners through this tough time. The first podcast last week went very well and we've had some good feedback, so hopefully it could be the same this time. I'm proud to say I've got three very distinguished guests, friends of mine for quite a long time, very well respected within the recruitment industry, and they're going to offer some help and advice, hopefully, at the end of this podcast that everybody will take something from. So if you'd like to introduce yourselves first, Martin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Martin Nichols. I have about 33 years experience in the recruitment industry. And I've lived and worked in Europe, the US, and also Asia Pacific, and physically lived in recruitment in Hong Kong, Singapore, Thailand, Australia, and London, UK. And look forward to sharing at least some experiences with you today.
Thank you, Martin. And secondly, Angela Cripps.
I think I'll probably just say ditto, although I haven't lived in those places. No, I don't quite get the length of service that Martin's had. I'm in my 31st year in recruitment and have spent the majority of the time in the UK as a recruiter, a trainer, a coach, but I have spent the last 4 years in APAC and traveling over there. So yeah, love it. So Bangkok, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Singapore, China, Australia. So yeah, as far afield as I can get. Auckland was the furthest. That's as far as I got.
Fantastic. And last but not least, the lovely Paul.
Thanks, Richard. Hi, I'm Paul Hickey, here in the UK, and I'm going to bring the average amount of time down in recruitment to a mere 15 years on my part, unlike our colleagues here. And my background is started a recruitment company, a contingency-based recruitment company in 2007 called Grass Greener Group. We work globally in executive search. After the recession in 2008, 2009, we changed our business model over a period of 12 months from contingency to retained within the same typically industrial tech-led markets, again globally. And that encouraged us to build a unique proposition, which we called iIntro, and that's a tech platform that underpins and supports the methodology that we carry out as a search business. And in 2013, we made that available to other forward-thinking recruitment companies globally, including Parker Bridge. So I wear two hats, and hopefully today I can share some of my knowledge through both businesses and help Parker Bridge companies in Thailand.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. So we've got over 100 years recruitment experience on this call. Sounds a lot, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, so if we go on to the first subject, and this question's to you, Martin, really. As the ex-CEO of Talent2 in Hong Kong, at the time of the 2008 global crisis, what lessons did you learn that might help industry leaders today to come through something, obviously this is an unprecedented crisis at the moment, but I think economically it's going to be similarities. What did you do, or what tips could you give leaders today?
Sure, Richard, and thank you for that. I guess I've worked through a number of recessions, 2 or 3 recessions in Europe and Australia, and obviously I was in Hong Kong at the time of the financial global crisis, the global financial crisis, and I remember it came in like a wall. And I almost remember the date. I think it actually really started to hit Asia kind of at the beginning of February 2008, and I went to networking events, which I usually do, as you know. And I remember just the look on everybody's face. I met with bankers, I met with recruiters, I met with property agents, I met with people running commercial businesses. And it was like, it's happening, it's here. We're in for a ride. We don't know what it is, but the economies have gone skew-if and things are starting to go wrong. And this experience has been very different as well, because, it's only, I think it's exactly 90 days today or tomorrow, the first corona death was actually recorded. And think about what's changed in that time already. And, a lot of the focus of the world has been about confusion. A lot of the messages from government has been about confusion. We're getting mixed messages. It's been about curfews. It's been about self-isolation. It's been about working from home, businesses adapting to work from home. But it's only the last couple of days that really I've seen the financial effects starting to become headlines, because I think people were dealing with people, which is the right reaction. People were trying to look after populations across the globe. But today, I just made the mistake of Googling global recession. And 2 minutes later, I wish I hadn't done that, because all I saw was, headlines like chance of global recession sits now at 100%. I saw a headline saying the global recession has already begun. We saw France yesterday. But also this comes from people-related issues rather than financial-related issues, which is where the GFC came from. But nevertheless, I think there are some learnings we have from that. I'll never also forget, I was driving home the day after, in Hong Kong, I was driving along Hennessy Road, about 6 o'clock or whatever the time was. And I had a call from my boss at the time. And he basically said, it was in the day of car phones, so I wasn't talking on my mobile, but he basically said, look, we've got to make some changes. We're going to have a continuity plan by tomorrow, but we've got to cut costs, and I want you to give me 12 names tomorrow, or 12 positions, should I say, that we're going to make redundant. And I was I didn't agree with it. I didn't understand it. I was completely confused by it, but I didn't go home. I went to a bar, sat in a corner, and wrote 12 names down. And the very next day, I had to look at those faces. And these were people I'd brought into the business who were very close to me. They were friends, I knew their families. And we had to make changes. But it wasn't just about the people. And I think, when a business, I think one of the lessons we had from that was we reacted early. And it was the best thing we did, whatever that reaction might be. And there's no point in having a car without fuel. And in the same way, there's no point in having a business without people, especially a recruitment business. So we started to look at different ways of saving costs, different ways of looking at what we were doing and bringing it all together and moving through into the next phase. And the good thing about this is that it does come to an end. It will come to an end. But this isn't like a practice lesson now. This is reality. It's almost like being on if you remember the ghost train, I don't know if you ever went on the ghost train at Blackpool. And, you go round and round, and then you go inside the tunnel, and you're not quite sure which way it's going to turn. You're not quite sure which way the car's going to jolt next, or which ghost's going to jump out at you on the ghost town. It feels a little bit like that at the moment. We don't know which countries are going to be affected the largest. We don't know which part of our businesses are going to be affected in the largest way. But what we do know is now change is afoot, and we've got to ride that train. So I think, one of the biggest lessons I learned from that whole experience, we came out the other end. We did survive. We did have a few bruises, but we made decisions quickly. And in fact, strangely enough, we managed to win a big project during the GFC and ended up hiring back the people that we'd actually made redundant. So it actually worked out for everybody in the end. But I think, to me, there are really, just to keep it simple now and facing what we have to face now, there are going to be some hard decisions along the way. But I think there are 3 pillars for me. We've got to look at our cost base. Like I said, it's not all about people. As recruitment organizations, it might be, people are starting to negotiate changes in rent on apartments. Perhaps that's in business coming up. Governments are offering assistance in some countries. Maybe it's phone plans, maybe it's software, maybe it's job boards. And also, cash is king, maybe it's cash flow. I've spent much more time over the last few days chasing money myself than I really ever have done in my career, because that's important, and that's what's going to keep me going, and that's what's going to keep my business going. And also money in, like I say. So it's not about making cuts for the sake of cuts in terms of people. The other thing I think we need to think about, or one of the other things I need to think about, is our staff. I've seen a couple of webinars over the last couple of days on staff engagement. I would say engagement now is more important than it has ever been for any of us. And that works both ways. We need our staff need us, and we need them to be engaged. We need them to be working. We're in a different environment now. In the GFC, we couldn't send people home because they didn't have computers at home. We couldn't supply laptops at home. This is a very different scenario, and the whole world is adjusted or is adjusting to working from home. But if people aren't engaged, they're not going to work from home. If they're sitting watching Netflix now, they're not engaged. If they're working hard, you'll know it as a leader. And I think that whole relationship has changed. I think it will change for the long term. And I think there are things that we're changing now that will go into the future post this virus. But I think it's about now that our staff need us. And it's not always the head honcho they need. The head honcho, I think what people look from the boss is they look for solid decision-making, honesty, transparency, and direction. Going back to the ghost train, who knows what's next? We don't know what's next. So to go to a business and say, and I saw this happening, not in my business, thankfully, but I saw it happening in other businesses during the GFC. People were going and saying, we'll be all right. We don't need to make redundancies. We don't need to make changes. And guess what? A month later, death by 1,000 knives, they were making death by 1,000 cuts. They were making those changes in their businesses. And the trust that's then left behind with the staff that you've got left, well, it's gone because they're not going to believe any message that comes from their leaders. But it's not all, like I say, it's not all about top dog. It's really about their line manager. And I'm kind of looking at James now as I'm James's face on the screen at the moment as I'm talking about this, because James's personal relationship with his team, as a coach, as a mentor, as a buddy, as a leader, as a guide, are more and more important than ever now. And I think, you know, I'm noticing it. Same, I put something on the internet, on LinkedIn the other day. It's in the same way that I'm getting calls now from people that I haven't spoken to for 36 years. And in fact, the other night I had that very discussion. We hadn't spoken for 36 years. But I'm taking this as an opportunity to really talk to people. And I think this is also just an opportunity. My client, I had a call from a client earlier on, Martin, you okay? I'm just calling to touch base. No recruitment going on, no coaching going on, no consulting going on, but they care, people care, and we all need to show that care. I think the other thing is our clients, our offerings. And, you know, we come from, most of us, from traditional recruitment businesses. I've worked in contingent recruitment, I've worked in search, I've worked in mass recruitment and outsourcing. But now it's about looking at what can we do for the market. You know, we've seen in Australia lots of opportunities in retail, for example. We've seen governments, call centers. I've got friends who run call center businesses. Huge now, supporting governments, both in UK, Australia, Singapore as well. One of the companies I used to work for has just won a huge contract this week, supporting the Ministry of Manpower in Singapore. So the work changes. I think the nature of the work will change, the nature of the market will change. And also, let's not forget there's an opportunity for contract work, for example, now. Perhaps a traditional permanent business, there's good opportunities in contract working as well. There's always opportunity out there.
Well, I think you see, Martin, sorry to interrupt, I think you see something that we adopted a few weeks ago was, you know, we're traditionally a contingency with a little bit of search. We've been taken over by Anchor, which is a lot of contracting payroll, which has now allowed us to introduce our new service where we're offering, you know, a free placement for 3 months and we'll payroll it and then they pay a permanent fee if they decide to take them on. Hopefully that's giving something back to our clients in tough times.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. You know, that includes, as you mentioned, like new pricing structures. Mm-hmm. You know, if a client can't pay the full fee now, well, come to some kind of arrangement. Maybe come to it in advance because they don't want to see that fee coming before. Move to contracting, whatever it might be. But I think some of my advice to leaders, just on those points a little bit, is decisive leadership. I think try new things, and you've heard me say this before, Richard, try new things, but if they're not working, fail fast. This is not the time to try new things for the sake of it, but this is the time to try new things. But if they don't work, my advice is fail fast. Be transparent, everybody, with your people, with your teams, with your clients, with your candidates, and have a plan. Like any day, and you know, anytime any business without a plan doesn't reach their goal, right? And business, if we don't have a continuity plan now of some kind, we don't reach our goal. And so there always needs to be a plan. don't become the victim. Don't let your organizations become the victim. Have a plan around it. There's always a plan. There's always work out there. There's always opportunity out there. But we do have to dig deep to find it. Okay. Just one other word. I think just a couple of things I just want to mention before I let somebody else talk. Lots of changes can be made in terms of, 3-day weeks, 9-day fortnights. Furloughing staff is a big thing now, which wasn't really available then because the government's help and things like that. So putting staff off for a few weeks and stuff like that. But I think it's about looking at all the alternatives and all the rest of it. But you've got to kind of go into this without emotion, and which is a very difficult thing to do. And some hard decisions are going to be hard along the way. A word on recruiters. Recruiters. A few weeks ago, people across the world, I'm not just talking about recruitment here, were jumping up and down in joy because they could work from home. Well, guess what? That's become real. You've got to work from home. And you can't sit around on Netflix. And you can't sit around, playing video games or whatever might be your thing. The time has come to put productivity into the game. And, guess who's going to be the top of any list of cost reductions if they're not on the ball and working hard? So my advice to recruiters is work harder than you've ever worked before, because you'll get through it. And my advice to leaders is to stay closer than you've ever, without bothering and hindering your staff as before, but as support. And you'll get through it. We'll all get through it. There is an end to it. We just need to have a plan to get there.
Thank you, Martin. That's very, very helpful. I think we'll have a discussion around this, because Angela's sort of topic sort of really follows on from this really well. So if I let Angela just discuss what she's going to discuss first, and then we can have a little chat. So, the question to you, Angela, really does follow on from Martin's topic. Was, you spend a lot of time working with a broad range of recruitment companies across the globe. At time, and I noticed you've been on lots of webinars and podcasts over the last few weeks. What is it? What companies, recruitment companies, are doing things differently that are doing well? And if you could give us some tips and advice on the ones that you think are going to survive what they're doing, and maybe some advice on the ones that are not so good.
Yeah, definitely. Certainly the things that Martin was saying there, I was thinking, yeah, that relates to what I want to say. There's a lot of similarity going in there, and unfortunately, it did take me back to it wasn't the GFC. It was 28 years ago where we had a recession, and I think my worst day in recruitment was when I had to go in and lay off 150 people 5 weeks before Christmas, and that's sort of the scenario that we're getting at the moment. But again, those people stuck around. We were very transparent, explained everything to them, and they all came back when the work came back about 6 weeks later. So for me, that again, it's like you've got to try and find those little nuggets of positivity, and that we will get through this and things will change. So the key 3 areas that I've been looking at with companies. One is that engagement piece. So engaging them online, and how do they do that? So I wanted to talk more about what's been happening and what those companies have been doing. 2, motivating and managing their performance. So not being that micromanager that because they're not there, you're on them all the time and you're trying to find out all there. It's about that trust piece and how you can do that realistically with individuals and different individuals, because they're all going to need different things. So I've seen some companies that have done that really well. So I wanted to share some of those examples. And then finally, the proactive activities. What is it that you can actually be doing at this time? Because it's not all about the sales. It's not all about getting immediate business, whereas recruiters are sort of honed to try and do that. So it's more that long-term relationship building, and what are you doing now that's going to impact your business in a month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months time when we're through this, because who knows when we're going to be through it. So there's been quite a lot around what people are doing well and what people are not doing so well. So I'll be sharing some of that.
Fantastic. Okay.
So did you want me to share it now?
Yes.
We have a discussion. Okay. So the first piece then, that engaging teams online. First and foremost, some people have really stepped up to the online. the Zoom meetings, the team, the house parties, whatever it is that you're getting to connect with people. What's working really well in companies is having a structure for that. So everyone knows the expectation, everyone knows when they're meant to be online, and the companies that have really worked well with it is where they've actually set probably a morning meeting or a lunch meeting, first and foremost, that's not about business. So yes, you're going to have the business meetings through the week, but the first thing that they did was say, let's have a catch-up meeting every day, where we either do it at the beginning of the day where everyone grabs a coffee and we just chat about maybe the telly the night before, how we're doing, what's happened this morning, but it's about you. You know, when you used to go in and you'd be in the kitchen and you'd have those conversations as to what's going on with people. Well, they've made that formal, as it were, but it's an informal chat. Or it's we all grab some lunch together and we actually do have lunch and we then have a chat that way. So that's been really great because people have felt supported. They've felt that they've got an opportunity. If they're struggling, that's the time to say it. And they get support from everyone else. So that's the first thing. Get an informal meeting in there every day that everyone gets together and just chats, whatever's going on. Then you've got your team meetings. And this is where people have got quite creative and they've ended up saying, having a theme for each meeting. So whether it's a once a week, everyone gets together and updates. And again, it's not about the figures, it's about the highs and the lows, the challenges, training and development needs that they want to move forward with. Because of course, these couple of months are a great time to actually develop your teams if you're not that busy. Of course, there are sectors that are really busy at the moment and therefore that they're going to need other support. But themes that I've seen, I've done a few training courses online, so I've used some of these as well. But yeah, start the meeting with a hat on. Everyone's got to find a hat. So some people haven't got hats, they've got calendars on their heads. It doesn't matter, it's that energy that starts the meeting. Everyone's having a laugh and a joke and you sort of vote the best one. I've seen some where people have had to come online and we wouldn't recognise it was you. So whether they've suddenly put a load of makeup on, where they don't normally wear makeup, that could be male or female. They've changed their hair totally. You've got people in masks that's like, oh my God, who's that? So again,
I could actually just put my daughter in front of the camera and talk from behind the camera and make her move her lips.
I have my dog. So my dog's head was there. So there is a picture out there on LinkedIn somewhere where, yeah, you can't see me. You've just got a big pug face on the camera. So yeah, but like 4 or 5 minutes of just that engagement and everyone uplifting the spirits. And now's your time. And of course, we're getting to see a little bit of people's homes. Shenzhen, anyone? Darfen. So therefore, it's you're getting an insight into people. So that's great for the motivation levels. Those team meetings, 15 minutes, half an hour. So you don't necessarily need to have them too long. Those quick hits are working quite well. And then every week a one-to-one, which you would normally be having anyway. But these one-to-ones have adapted slightly because it's not all about the figures. It's about the individual taking responsibility for what they want to achieve, how they've done it, and also about then their training needs and what support and help they do need. So that one-to-one should give someone the opportunity to really talk through those challenges, and that's where they're getting support. So they know they've got different scenarios each week for different opportunity to share information, and that way the manager can stay in touch in different ways and deal with each one on their one-to-one, where they're actually picking up and moving them forwards. One thing that's working really well is people are setting their own targets, and we'll come to sort of what those activities are being. But rather than it being about money at the moment or placements or getting people out, if you're not in that sector that's really busy, then it's got to be other things. So it's about that individual setting their own targets. And one thing I've really liked is they've had, when the Olympics was still on, so we're doing our own Olympics now instead, and people are setting their goals and then they're allocating themselves. Did I get gold, silver or bronze? It was only a three-man race. So was it gold, silver or bronze? And therefore they have to challenge and say why they came last or why they actually think they won that week. And therefore they've got medal tables. So people are getting prizes for their medal tables and recognition. And it could be a voucher of some sort. It doesn't have to be. It could just be the recognition that they come top of the leaderboard that week. But those type of things that just make it, well, gamification really, isn't it, online, and just trying to do it themselves to give that lift as to what they're doing, because it's not all about the end results as we know them at the moment. So we need to adapt, which leads me on to my second point, which is this really hit home for me a couple of weeks ago, actually. FDR, I hadn't seen the quote before, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, smooth seas do not make skillful sailors. And I thought, yeah, how true. I've been saying it for a while, since the GFC. You could have been in recruitment now a good sort of 8, 9, even 10 years and not had to try that hard, not have to be that good to get business, to make money. So we've got a lot of people in our industry that have got a lot of experience but have never coped with anything like this. So for me, that's a positive, because we are going to get good at what we do, and we're seeing those companies back to basics. So they're making sure they're not cutting any corners. They've got no excuses now, and it's all about developing relationships. So picking up on what Martin said, now's the time to be having those conversations with companies around what's happening with them, how are they coping, what's their plans, what are their challenges, in what way can you help in any way. And I'm seeing companies that are offering 33% of their profit that they make from placements to the NHS here in the UK. So that one went down well. Anything that you can do that gives back is really promoting your business, and obviously fantastic PR, but it's the right thing to do. So we talked about what companies are doing well and what they're not. There was a piece that went out a couple of days ago from a networking group saying, we've been in this a long time, like the rest of us, and we smashed it in the GFC. So do you want to work with people that smashed it and made loads of money? And actually it didn't go down great, because people are going, that doesn't seem right. I don't want to be working with people that are smashing it during this time, because we've all got to help each other. If you're making a lot of money, then what are you giving back? How are you helping? It shouldn't be all about the profits. We're all in this together. And if you are doing well, then now's your time to step up and help other people.
Yeah, Angela, sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, I think you're really right. I think there's going to be a lot of, not just recruiters, but there's going to be a lot of business leaders that have never been through anything like this before, and they don't know what to do either. And because obviously we speak to different industries and different leaders all the time, they look to us for advice and say, you know, what's our competitors doing? And I think we're in a good position to help have them conversations and help business leaders now.
Yes, I mean, you've got companies. I've got a few clients that are in hospitality, so of course that went straight away. But the positivity that they were showing right from the beginning, and this comes back to that authentic leadership, total transparency. Look, we deal with restaurants. There are no restaurants open, so what can we do instead? So that adapting, so it's real Darwinism I'm seeing anyway, in sort of true time, where people are adapting. And that's not survival of the fittest, which a lot of people get wrong, isn't it? It's the survival of those ones that can adapt to their environment. So those restaurants that were shut down, there's some that have really capitalized on the fact they had all that food. So either they've given it to local causes and gained a lot of respect that way, but they're also now getting people to donate online. So they've got a crowd sharing going on. They're donating online. They're carrying on working, and they're creating those meals for the NHS staff. So for the people on the front line. So they're carrying on their business. They're getting money in to pay for all their resources, and they're then getting the money. No one's actually getting those meals. They're going to the NHS. So people are paying for them and quite willingly helping to support that. So no one would have thought of that a month ago, that they would be paying a meal for someone in the NHS. But now that's how we're working. It's like, what can you do? How can you support? And therefore, those recruitment agencies that are supplying to those places, again, there's some that are saying we're not looking to make any profit during this time. We just want to get through it. We want to help where we can, and therefore we're going to be giving back. And that sense of community spirit has really risen. So smooth seas do not make skillful sailors. We're starting to see the people stepping up, and who are the ones that actually are going to get through this, because they're adapting, they're changing, and they're recognizing that they've got to help, they've got to support. what's lovely as well is where people aren't able to work and they're getting other jobs. I'm seeing it on LinkedIn a lot, where people are saying, I'm either volunteering here or actually I've got a new job, and they're there in their Tesco, Asda, Woolworths, whatever it is, outfit, and everyone's cheering. Again, we wouldn't have seen it that way a month ago. So our attitudes have changed. It's about what can you do. Yeah,
I think it's good because recruiters normally get a bad press, don't they, from most people out there in business. And I think now is the time that we can really do give something back and offer advice and help and support and, you know, that sort of thing. And I think a lot of the recruitment companies, like you said, I've seen stepping up.
Yeah, and they're the ones that are going to be remembered. So that links into that point around motivating and managing performance. Start thinking about not the results that you want in 3 months, 6 months time or a year, where we would normally, it's about how do you want your business or yourself to be remembered after this period in time. We had the Queen's speech on Sunday. She's only ever spoke to us 5 times in 80 years outside of her Christmas Day speech. So it was quite unusual, but hence the pearls. I'm playing her in a skit later today, actually. So that's where that comes in. But her message was all about let's make sure that when in years to come, when history looks back on this, that us as individuals were seen as that caring type, and that we actually shared, we helped, we supported, and we did it with a bit of humour as well. And that's sort of the British sense anyway. Yeah, stiff upper lip, but let's have a laugh at ourselves. We don't take ourselves too seriously. So yeah, that's something that I'm doing today. So we'll see. I'm not very good at accents, but I will try the Queen. Right, so let's finish on the proactive activities then. What is it that you can actually be doing? So as I mentioned, get the individual to set their own targets at this point. You can have a huge list. I'm just going to run off a few, but things, it doesn't have to be results anymore. It could be LinkedIn connections, video calls, finding high demand candidates, webinars attended, blogs or articles written, following up on potential clients, following everyone on LinkedIn, getting new testimonials. Now's the time. You've got the time to go back and build your profile and get some testimonials from people that you've placed in the past. But also identifying new skills. What else could I be learning? What's the thing that I've been putting off because I just haven't had the time? Profiling your own clients, looking at what clients are your best clients, what are the characteristics about those clients, and then going back and reviewing who you've been working with over the last few years and where do they sit, because now's the time to also start working on those relationships. How can you make them better? What conversations can you have? What things can you offer to actually build on those relationships? So when those people are recruiting again, you're the person they're going to think of because you're the one that helped them through it in whatever format that takes. So identifying sort of things that your customers would like, whether that's webinars, events, information, detail, have those conversations, share the market knowledge that you get, because we're talking to lots of people at the same time, candidates and clients, and start pushing back and giving that and saying, well, I saw this article, thought of you, and send it through to them. So certainly with your potential clients that you want to work with, they should be really grateful that you're trying to help, you're supporting in whatever way you can. So when they do need to recruit again, then the likelihood is you're going to be top of that list. So there's lots of activities that people can be doing, and they set their own targets, and again, set them so that they can then go, right, did I get gold, silver or bronze on this? How am I doing? Am I needing support and help? Or actually, no, I'm doing really well now, and I've got a focus, I've got an idea, I've got what I want to do, and each day then. So that testimonial one, I spoke to someone last Monday, and we just said that, okay, today all you're going to focus on is getting testimonials. By Wednesday, they had 13 LinkedIn testimonials that they would have never had before if they hadn't just taken that time. And that type of thing, I just want to finish on that point, because if you're feeling down, if you're really struggling, go back and read your testimonials, your LinkedIn recommendations. They will bring a tear to your eye if you're in that situation. But that's the time that what other people think about you and what they've said about you really helps to just bring you back and go, actually, no, I've got this, I can do this. This is who I am. This is what people see me as. And therefore, yeah, move on.
Do you think it's wrong to read them every morning, Angela?
Well, that might be a little bit of overkill. It depends how many you've got, actually. So yeah, if you've got a lot, then you might pick 5 every morning, and that could last you a couple of weeks.
Good. Well, thanks, Angela. Some great tips there, Martin or Paul. Any thoughts on what Angela said and what Martin said earlier, Paul?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've done in our recruitment company, Grass Greener, we launched this a couple of weeks ago, is we offered 10 companies our services completely free of charge. There was a caveat that, well, 2 caveats. One, that people shouldn't unfairly take advantage of our good nature, and our help was aimed at companies that were perhaps in real distress. They were in the final stages of recruiting somebody who was critically important to their business, or perhaps they'd lost somebody temporarily or even permanently to COVID-19. So a key position in a business, perhaps a sales director or a managing director. So we said, look, guys, if anybody out there needs our assistance, we would gladly help you completely, 100% free of charge. And we offered that to 10 companies. Now, we haven't been approached by 10 companies. We've been approached by a few who we're working with, but at least the offer was made, and at least we can help some people. So that was something that Angela brought up in terms of going and helping people as best as you can. As did Martin, in terms of going and just talking to people and making sure that they know that you're there for them in a time of need. And I think that will pay dividends going forward, as well as just doing the right thing.
No, thanks. Martin, have you anything to add?
No, look, I think they're wonderful points, and I think that's a great initiative, Paul. And actually, you've got me thinking now about a couple of things that went off the boil a few weeks ago that I could almost give back as gifts. And I think that's very, I really think that's a great initiative. So well done. Also, Angela, I think some of your ideas were fantastic. I really like the way you're talking about organizations that aren't profitability, but trying to make their way through. And I also, just to add on to that, I think this is a time where recruitment leaders should not be afraid. You know, historically, recruitment leaders are quite well known for throwing sand in each other's faces and all the rest of it. But now, reaching out to fellow recruitment leaders in your country, in your region, in Thailand, where we have a lot of Western leaders who are facing different challenges or the same challenges as Richard and James, for example, I think this is a great time to reach out for help. You know, we've all been members of different recruitment networks and things like that, but this is a good time to create bonds within your industry, within our industry. So I think there are some fantastic initiatives around. Thanks for that.
I think, Martin, I think that's right. I think one of the reasons why we're doing this is basically, you know, one of our core values is giving back, and hopefully a lot of recruitment leaders in Thailand will listen to this and pick up some, you know, tips and advice, and hopefully some inspiration as well. So if we can just crack on to the last point, which is for Paul. Paul, as someone who's built their recruitment company around remote working and retained search, what help could you give to our listeners now that might just be adopting this model due to the current climate?
Sure. Okay. So, yeah, as I mentioned in my introduction, we do remote recruitment is not new to us as a business. So we have an office in the UK, and we also have an office in the Netherlands. So that's remote on the recruitment side. And then on our iIntro side, which is the tech platform, we have clients all over the world, with Parker Bridge in Thailand, companies in the US, in New Zealand, in Australia. So we're constantly online working with teams who are sat in boardrooms, they're sat at home, and they're in groups, they're individuals. So we found a way to make that work through technology. And I think when it comes to tech and remote technology, recruitment are the last division of any business to really take advantage of that. So when I go in with my recruitment hats on, when I go and speak to companies that are potential clients, potential users of our service, one of the first questions I ask them is, how has your recruitment process changed in line with the rest of your business over the last 20 years? So when we look at a finance department in a typical business, or an operations department, or a manufacturing department, or a technical department, through technology, through advances in technology and processes and science, etc., businesses have moved on a great deal. However, when I ask them how their recruitment process has moved on in the last 20 years, quite often it's as obvious as, well, we now send CVs via email and we used to send them via fax. So quite often we're laggards when in the recruitment industry when it comes to taking on new methodology and new technology. So if you think about it, CVs have been around for a long time, resumes, and they are always the edited highlights. Everybody's got a fantastic CV. And something else that we look at is why people join a business. And typically people are hired because of their skills, their knowledge, their experience, and their background, their education. However, why are people typically fired from a business? And I ask this of my clients, why did you fire the last 3 people, or why did they choose to leave your business? And 99% of the time, that's due to behavioral reasons. They were not getting along with people in the team. They seemed unmotivated. It wasn't because they didn't have the skills or knowledge, because they wouldn't have been hired in the first place. So it was cultural reasons, it was behavioural reasons. So we look at that as well, and that's all part of a retained service. So that's a preamble to what I want to talk about, Richard. 3 elements that I'll cover are: businesses need to understand their statistics when it comes to recruitment, not only right now in these difficult times, but anyway. And my business partner, Plamen, he's just delivered an amazing recording to our client base saying, I keep hearing people talking about getting back to normal, but do we really want to get back to normal? And what parts of normal do we want to return to? And which parts of normal do we actually want to change moving forward? Because this is a great opportunity for recruiters, for hiring teams, for businesses to review where they're at, to do some additional learning, perhaps coming to webinars like this, and then considering how they've done things in the past directly related to recruitment, and how they can change, develop, improve moving forward. So I want to talk to people about understanding their stats. I'll come back to that. I want to talk to people about finding a recruitment partner that they can trust and rely on. And also I want to talk about and finish off on remote recruitment itself. Does that sound okay to you, Richard?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Crack on.
Okay, fantastic. So understanding statistics. So I'm talking about a hiring company, an employer. Firstly, what are your new employee retention rates? If you're in HR, if you're a business leader, one thing that you absolutely should know, and if you don't know it, please go and find out what your new employee retention rate is. So how many people do you take on in a typical year, either across the business or choose a particular division? If you take on 10 people, how many people typically leave or are fired in the first 12 months? Let's say, for example, that's 3. That's very typical. It's very typical that companies have a 70% retention rate. That's quite a positive connotation, 70% retention rate. Flip that around, it's also a 30% failure rate. Now, is a 30% failure rate acceptable in any other area of your business? Because I doubt it is. If it's a 30% failure rate in manufacturing, you're going out of business pretty quick. So don't accept it in recruitment and in hiring just because it seems the norm. It's no longer the norm. Maybe it was 20 years ago. It's not now. There are better ways to do it. What's your time to hire? From deciding that you need to recruit to that person walking through the door on the Monday morning and starting with your company, what's your time to hire? It doesn't necessarily need to be made quicker, but it needs to be made more efficient, because what you've got then is something called commercial downtime. And whilst hiring teams are spending time hiring and perhaps getting it wrong 30% of the time, what can they be doing to improve efficiencies? What's the cost to hire? And believe it or not, it doesn't really matter what the recruitment company charges. One of the first things that hiring managers are very keen to do is understand how much the recruitment company charges. In my view, that's the completely wrong approach. That's the approach to buying tomatoes down in the market. It's not about hiring people, human beings, people with emotions, with feelings, etc. So what you need to do basically is understand what the cost is to your business overall, and you calculate that by working out how long they stay with the business, and you use a year as that measure. So if people are staying a year, it's better to pay a 35% recruitment fee and ensure that they stay, hopefully with some kind of replacement policy or guarantees from the recruiter, rather than pay a recruitment consultant 15 or 20% and take a chance that they might leave. So the key question for employers, and I urge any hiring team to consider this, is when evaluating a recruitment partner, it's to ask them, how long do the candidates that you place stay in situ? How long do they stay in that position? Because that's the only thing that really matters, isn't it? It doesn't matter too much about how big your database is, which prestigious clients do you place with as a recruitment company. It's how long do the people that you place stay in situ. Does that make sense, Richard?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so understanding those stats and the costs surrounding it, again, I go back to something I mentioned before, commercial downtime. Typically within organizations, perhaps outside of HR, there's not a recruitment school that people go on. There's negotiation courses and there's sales courses and technical courses, but people don't typically go on how a hiring manager should identify, recruit and onboard individuals. There aren't too many of those courses about for sales directors and operations managers and so on and so forth. So working with a recruitment partner that can help guide through that process, like Parker Bridge, is going to pay dividends ultimately. But they need to ask themselves, the hiring team, how much it's costing them in commercial downtime when they should be doing what they do rather than what you could do for them. So that's the first element in understanding statistics. The second element is finding a retained recruitment partner, of course. In this instance, a company like Parker Bridge, who are going to be able to work with them and share the commitment. One of the most fundamental mistakes I believe companies make in the recruitment process, this is employers, is they think it's a good idea to have 2 or 3 recruitment companies working on the same vacancy at the same time. And to me, that's commercial suicide. The reason being is, first of all, as a hiring manager, if you put yourself in the shoes of a recruiter and you've asked 3 or 4 recruitment companies to go and find particular candidates for you, first of all, those recruiters are fishing in the same pond. And secondly, they already have only a 25 or 33% chance, depending on whether they're up against another 2 or 3 recruitment companies, of actually making any money themselves. And quite selfishly, recruiters, recruitment consultants, Parker Bridge are there as a commercial business to go and make money for themselves as well. So it's much better for the company to go and find a recruitment partner who they can partner with. They can give them 100% commitment. That means that Parker Bridge is a business with that 100% commitment could put 100% effort into the search rather than 25% effort or less. I mean, just to make, I don't know exactly the statistics in Thailand, but I imagine they're very, very similar, Richard, that most recruitment companies on a contingency basis, on a results only basis, would need to work on something between 5 and 10 vacancies to make one placement across the board. I'm not saying that's the same for Parker Bridge.
Yeah, I think you probably, James is on the call with us now. He's probably more sort of involved with this day to day. Would that sound about right, James?
I think if you averaged it out, I think it's right. And I think if you averaged it out on every single consultant within the business, I think more experienced people with better relationships that know what they're doing will have a better ratio. But I think if you was to take a mean across the whole of the business, I would say that's not far off.
Yeah, okay. So that just to clarify, that means that the recruitment consultant has to work on between 5 and 10 vacancies to make one placement. So let's say it's 5, only 20% of their time is productive, which means the recruitment consultant, in theory, only gets paid on a Friday if they're working a 5-day week. And that's not good business for the recruiter, and it's certainly not good business for the employer. Would they not prefer, perhaps for the same amount of money or less, because it's potentially less, because the more commitment the recruitment consultant gets, the more they can offer by way of leniency on their and reductions in their own fees. And they can work on it. They can put a 100% of their effort in because the client, the employer knows that they're going to get the right hire. and the recruitment consultant knows that they can invest all of their time in that particular client. So it's much better. So we call that a retained model. It's a commitment model. It's an upfront contract. There's no stealth fees. There's no negotiations at the end, and it makes for better business all around. And I think employers would see a huge improvement right across the board. And by the way, I'm not just talking about executive search. I'm not talking about senior and mid-management. I'm talking right across the board. And then we move into something called managed service contracts, where employers would give a company like Parker Bridge all of the vacancies across their company. Parker Bridge in-house would complete the vacancies that they are accustomed to, that they're familiar with, that they have the right skill set to deliver. And they would take responsibility to outsource other opportunities and that perhaps didn't fall in their domain, for example.
Paul, sorry, Paul, I know you're going to go on to this in a minute, but all the things that you're talking about here, you're currently doing remotely and can be adapted remotely by anybody else that wants to do this.
Absolutely, Richard. Why do we still insist as in the recruitment world? Why do we think it's so important to go and meet all the candidates that are in the process? Why do we think it's important to go and meet all of the companies? For 15 years, our recruitment company has been doing business globally. So we don't, it's impossible for us to jump on an aeroplane and go and meet with all of our clients and candidates. So we've learned by default how to do it remotely. So it's really interesting for us that companies all of a sudden, we're seeing webinars and discussions left, right, and centre about video recruitment and remote recruitment and working from home. For us, it's perfectly normal. So something that Parker Bridge have worked with on their executive roles for quite some time, and I know that are now feeding that through their business, is the Parker Bridge Executive Intro. So that's software that we developed for our own business back in 2010, coming out of the recession. And that's a tech platform, but more importantly, it's a methodology that recruiters follow, such as Parker Bridge, and pass through to the employers to make the recruitment more efficient, to improve the retention rate. So using this platform and using this process, employers typically see a 96% retention rate in new hires. So the candidates that are placed, 96% of them are still there after 12 months, and typically 93% after 2 years. So going back to what I said before, that's the solution to that particular problem. It's a huge cost saving. It reduces commercial downtime and cost to hire as well. So what does Parker Bridge Executive Intro include? Rather than just sending a CV, it will include a video introduction of each candidate on that shortlist. And this, by the way, is a platform that the hiring team, no matter where they are, whether they're working from home, they're in different offices, they're in different countries, this is something that they can tap into from their iPhones, iPads, laptops at a click of a button. So the shortlist that Parker Bridge provide would include a candidate video introduction. That's the candidate producing a video in the comfort of their own home, basically with an elevator pitch as to who they are, what they can bring to the table. So that's very personalized. It's answering a number of key competency-based questions, perhaps around communication skills, leadership, management skills, negotiation skills, so on and so forth. So the candidates answer those questions, and that allows, first of all, the recruiter and then the employer to understand how this person thinks, how they operate. Furthermore, we ask them to complete a behavioural assessment. So this is bringing science into an objectivity into what is typically a very subjective recruitment process. The recruiter also adds in references, their own executive summary, key facts about the candidate. So it's a whole package, a whole suite of information on a number of shortlisted candidates. Let's say that's 5. So what happens then, by way of reducing commercial downtime, is the employer and the stakeholders within that organisation, they tap into the platform and sat right now with the COVID-19 crisis from the comfort of their own home, they tap into the system and they continue with recruitment. They then move it on to a Zoom conference or something similar. And actually, within our recruitment company in the UK, just 2 weeks ago, from outset to completion, we recruited a managing director for a company based out of China with a Belgian HQ. and we recruited a managing director for them, and they've not met in person. We've done this before many times with companies in the US, hiring people in Europe or even in other parts of the US. Sometimes there's no need to meet, and we're finding out that that's still the case now, and it will still be the case when we come out of the other side of COVID-19. Any questions on that, Richard, before I move on to my last point?
No, I was just going to ask Angela. I mean, some of this is quite close to your heart, but what's your thoughts on what Paul said so far?
Yeah, I think, well, certainly people aren't going to be looking to be spending any money at this time. So they're not going to be in a position to try new technology or new things. So if they're not spending any money, Paul, how can they change from a contingency-based process that they've worked with maybe for many years? What's the key thing they need to do to be able to change to an executive search?
I'd say it's at Parker Bridge, for example, it's to speak with somebody like James or Richard, people who, Faizan, for example, people who understand why this is better for them. And I think now is the right time for people to learn. It's to learn how to do something new.
Yeah.
They don't need to put the wheels in motion right now at this moment in time. But it's about understanding why they should make that change. Why going back, and again, I always think of other departments and not just recruitment. Somebody at some point made the decision to move from paper to digital in the finance department, or move from people to robotics in the operations department. And I think now is the right time for companies to stop treating recruitment and stop treating people like commodities, and start to treat people like specialities, like human beings. And I think the contingency model, for the most part, does treat people like a CV, like a piece of paper. People have emotions, people have personalities, people have a lot to offer. And I think it's about time we started assessing people, not just on skills and knowledge, not just on their CV, but on behaviours, on personality. And in order to allow yourself as a hiring manager the time to do that, and allow the recruiter to do more than just find and send you a CV, it's time for companies to start partnering with recruitment companies and putting some real time and effort into it. And guess what? It's going to reduce their overall costs. Believe me, I have so much evidence of.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you there. And actually, there's been a lot of recruiters for a long time that have been doing it on contingency, but actually they've been doing the search. So they've not been getting the retainer, but they've been doing the work anyway. And I think you're right. It's a time for us to take a step back, to reflect, and for all those hiring managers to think about the relationships they've got and how they've been working with their recruitment agencies. And actually, can we make this relationship better? Can we make it easier for everyone? And you're right. If we're going to make it easier and quicker, and the people are going to stay, then actually they win in all three counts, and it will be cheaper for them. So that, yeah, spot on.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so just on that point of remote recruitment, Richard, just to give you an example of something that we do in the UK, we work with it's actually an Irish business, headquartered both in Ireland and the UK, and it's very relevant in as much as they are one of the world's leading manufacturers of PPE products. Most people didn't actually know what PPE was until about 3 weeks ago, and now it's top of everybody's mind. And from our office in the UK via a managed service contract, we've recruited over 60 people for them. These are salespeople in the USA. So pretty much somebody in every state, and sometimes two people in a state. We've not visited America. We've not met the leaders in America. We've not met one candidate, but the company are proving very, very successful. That's over a 3-year period, so around 20 people per year into that business. And guess what? We charge them around half of our typical fee. Because as a business, for commercial reasons, we absolutely know that we've got a long-term commitment from this company. So each role that we get gets 100% of our attention. They find candidates that stay with the business long-term. If anybody leaves in that first 12-month period, we offer them a free replacement. And we're only charging half of what we typically charge, yet it's still profitable for us, because we're not just getting paid for 1 day a week, as I mentioned before, because we're not working contingency. So it's a vicious cycle of recruitment, in my view, is the contingency world. And as Angela and I have just agreed, people should, hiring managers should take this opportunity to understand how this works. And I'd encourage anybody in Thailand who's in a senior position and looking to recruit, who thinks it's a good idea to give a vacancy to 3 or 4 different recruitment companies, take this time to reconsider that. Speak with the guys at Parker Bridge, and they'll show you a way to make it better, to make it potentially cheaper, to improve efficiencies, and to find people who will stay with your company long term.
Thanks for that endorsement, Paul. Very, very nice.
Well, we've worked together for a long time, Richard. So I know where your heart is at, and I know that you guys do and want to do a great job for people. And I know that half of the battle is convincing people that there is a better way. It's not easy. It's not easy to change somebody's mindset who's done something in a particular way for such a long time. But of course, within our network, we have evidence of how it can improve everything. So that's why I'm quite passionate about it. And, perhaps you see it as an endorsement, but it's just me talking about passionately what we do.
Sure. No, thanks. Do you want to move on to the final point? I'm very conscious of
I've almost covered it actually, Richard, in most of what we've talked about. So a bit of a recap, in as much as people are now finding, and this was covered earlier by both Martin and Angela, that people are the most important part of any business. And if you haven't realised that before, these millennials who are now moving into leadership positions, people realised it in the first recession, the second recession of our lifetimes, perhaps in the UK during Brexit, and certainly now, that when people are not turning up for work, people are at home. It drives it home how important people are to your business, no matter how good your product or service is. Without people to push that, to innovate, to lead, to develop, to grow, then your business is nothing. So take care of your people, recruit them in the right way, treat them properly, incentivize them, treat them, care for them, spend time with them. Some of the things Angela covered, we're doing within our recruitment business. We have a 9 o'clock catch up, we sing a song, we have a bit of a giggle and a laugh. It's not all about work, but people know that we're there for them. And that's really, really important, not just for recruitment companies, for employers right across the board as well. Even if they're furloughed, don't just leave them to sit at home. Help them with some learning. I mean, just briefly, because I know we are pushed for time, but one of the things that we've done is we've written to all of our colleagues and said, look, guys, whilst you're at home, don't make it all about work. Jump on YouTube. It's the world's biggest resource for learning new things, learning about something technical, learning about something, negotiation skills, learning about business language. Jump on YouTube and learn TED Talks, etc. So that's something as well that I'd encourage people to watch.
Jump in there. This isn't a sales pitch. This is something that we're giving out for free at the moment. I'm working with the Recruiting Gym, and they've got the Light Edition. Hundreds of webinars. There's live ones. There's usually about 6 or 7 live ones every week. It's for recruiters around the world. Obviously, you guys have joined up on that. But the light version, anyone can join for free. So I'll give you the link to that, and you can put that out with this. So any recruiters, if you want some more support and help and training, if you're furloughed, perfect time. Get on board.
It's a fantastic service, Angela. We've been very impressed with it so far, so it's really good. And yeah, I would say to anybody, if they get the chance to have a look at that.
Okay, but yeah, this is the free stuff, so we'll get that out.
Sorry, Paul.
That really, I think that, Richard, again, conscious of time, that summarises, I think, where we're at, and I'm looking forward by way of example, I'm looking forward to spending at least 4 to 5 hours with you and your guys tomorrow, where we have a remote training session. So that encapsulates what we've been talking about here, doesn't it? Remote recruitment will be up on it's a bank holiday, of course. It's Easter weekend in the UK, but nonetheless, my colleagues and I will be up tomorrow morning first thing. You guys will be well into your afternoon and evening, and we're going to be jumping online and doing some training. So I'm excited for that, and I look forward to the next time I'm in Thailand and coming and meeting with you guys again. Always enjoy it.
Thanks. Martin, do you want to finish off on the final point?
But I think there's been some fantastic points made by everybody, and I've taken a lot of that myself. Paul, the first thing that you mentioned, I think when you said, we've all the industry's been laggards in terms of CVs, faxes to emails and new technology and all the rest of it. I mean, that struck a lot of lines, but it also dawned on me that right now, we've talked about agile learning, not really understanding what it's all been about over the last couple of years. But we're in this situation now where it is all about agile learning, because leaders, recruiters, everybody on the go, everybody trying to get to the end result, get through this period. We've got to learn very quickly about our whole environments and change very quickly. So that's just one of the last words I'd encourage everybody to do so. And it's not just about boss to employee. I think, employees, people sitting at home, working from home at the moment, well, you also owe a lot to your employer for your commitment and their commitment to get the job done. So, it's going to be an interesting ride, but good luck to everybody, and let's make the most of it.
Fantastic. Look, thank you very much for your time, guys. I think we've had some very interesting topics and some great advice. Hopefully the people listening in take something from this, and we'll speak again soon. Thanks a lot, guys.
Cheers. All the best.
Thanks,
everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.